Jorge Martín, from the International Marxist Tendency, who was a member of the SARU steering committee. Can you speak, please?
The conflict in Ukraine, it is a very complex conflict, and some use this as an excuse not to take position, which in effect means taking the position of supporting imperialism. But that doesn't mean that it's not a complex conflict, which has many different levels. It has an internal level, which is on different aspects, but it has also an international aspect to it, which is what we're trying to discuss in this session. I think that there were two interesting things that happened this week, which give you a glimpse or allow you to understand some of the problems of what is happening in Ukraine. This week, a member of the House of Representatives in the United States, Senator Conyers, he moved an amendment to a bill in the House of Representatives, and the bill is about arming and military aid to Ukraine from the United States. And the amendment that he moved has created a lot of trouble. But in the face of it, you wouldn't think that this should be controversial. He basically says that US military aid to Ukraine and training should not go to the Azov battalion, because the Azov battalion is composed of Nazis. This is a simple thing, and anyone can understand this, and no one should be against it. And I think that for this reason, and also perhaps ignorance in the US House of Representatives to some extent, this passed. It doesn't mean that this is now in the law, because it needs to go through more procedures, and then Obama has to sign it and all these things. But it did pass in that vote where it was taken. But this is a problem. It's a big problem, because the Azov battalion is not an ad hoc organization that is doing their own thing. It is now part of the state apparatus in Ukraine. And this is what we've seen for the last 1 year. The creation of fascist paramilitary organizations, which are not only allowed to function freely, but they are funded by the oligarchs, so the same people are in power. And they now progressively, not now, but for 1 year, they have been progressively incorporated into the state apparatus. The Azov battalion came to prominence 1 year ago now, when they carried out the brutal takeover bloody takeover of Mariupol. Where the referendum had taken place, there was a big majority of people who didn't support the Maidan regime in Kiev, and they came in, and through brutal methods, and they were allowed to, not only allowed, but prompted to do this by the new authorities in Kiev. So you can't really not provide, if the US wants to provide military training to Kiev, which it does, you cannot separate one thing from the other. The Azov battalion is now incorporated into the National Guard. It's not two separate things. It's one of the. You can't say, okay, Britain has got a military agreement with the United States, but this does not extend to this one Welsh regiment. No, I mean, the armed forces is the armed forces. The National Guard is the National Guard. So this is what is so dangerous about what is happening in Ukraine. There was another incident this week, 2 days ago. Samantha Powers, who is the US ambassador to the United Nations, she is in Ukraine. I'm not sure if she's left already, but she is in a visit to Ukraine. She made a big speech, which was full of rhetoric and yes, we with you, and blah, 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 democracy, standing up against Russian aggression, all the usual stuff. But in this speech, she said something which I think is very significant. She said, she expressed a criticism of the Kiev authorities, and she said, I do not think that the Kiev authorities have pursued the investigation of what happened in Odessa and what happened at Maidan, when people were killed by snipers, because they do not, it will seem that they do not want to find the perpetrators of these killings. And this, I think, is very significant, because obviously Samantha Powers wouldn't say this mistakenly. She really believes that this is the case. But what is the implication of this? One, that the regime don't want to find out who killed what actually happened in Odessa on May the 2nd, and who killed them. Most of the people who were killed in the house of trade unions. by fascist gangs with the collaboration of the state apparatus. It's obvious why they don't want to fight. But why don't they want to find out what happened in Maidan? Because we know that the snipers in Maidan, I can't remember the date, was it the 17th, 18th of February, 19th, the night of the 19th, 20th of February, the morning of that day, snipers fired on the demonstrators and some of the police officers. People were killed, and this was the final straw that brought about the overthrow of Yanukovych, when there was already an agreement being signed under pressure, being signed for his resignation, transfer of power, and so on. So why is it not in the interest of the new authorities who have said that the old regime fired on the innocent demonstrators? Why is it not in the interest to find out who carried this out? Because it wasn't the old regime who carried this out, it was clearly a provocation. Having said this, it is clear that the regime in Kiev is not one that we can support from any point of view. From a purely democratic point of view, this is a regime carrying out war on its own people for the crime that these people in the East, they wanted to carry out a referendum to decide their relationship with the rest of the country. It's basic democratic right. And it is also a regime that, as has been said, is now banned. It's not banned communist symbols, it's a bit more complicated than that. What is banned is any defense of the regime, as they say, that existed in Russia between 1917 and 1991. So anyone who says that Russia, the Soviet Union between 1917 and 1999 was not a murderous regime that carried out genocide against the Ukrainian people, that is what is said, then this is illegal. No, not only illegal, it's criminal. And therefore, all the symbols of that regime from 1917 to 1991 are banned. The red flag with hammer and sickle, the anthem of that country, which is the Internationale. It wasn't the anthem of the Soviet Union only, it's the International Workers' Song. All this is banned, and you can't use these symbols, and this is going to be enforced. It's going to be enforced. But the other thing is that it's not only this, it's not just that the fascist battalions have been incorporated into the state apparatus and are acting with impunity. It's also that the general discourse of the normal, let's call them, bourgeois political parties, Bloc Poroshenko, the Yatsenyuk's Popular Front party, all the main bourgeois parties have adopted the same language as the fascists, and it's now the official ideology of these ruling parties, and is now in the law. The recognition of those who collaborated with the Nazis in the Second World, during the Second World War and carried out genocide and so on, that they have to be recognized as freedom fighters for the freedom of Ukraine. And anyone who questions that, that's illegal and it's a criminal act. So when people say, some people say, oh no, but there's only maybe 2 or 3 openly fascist deputies in the Rada. Yeah, but the problem is that they've been elected with the support of the main parties, and the main parties have moved far to the right to incorporate these ideas of these parties. Some on the left in Ukraine explain it in the following way. The Ukraine as a country was founded by Lenin, was created by Lenin, in the sense that it's the result of the Russian Revolution. And it's been destroyed by the Ukrainian nationalists, which is ironic, but it's true. Because the only basis, as Andrew said, the only basis that Ukraine could exist as a unified nation is by recognizing its diversity, the different historical traditions that people refer to, the different national identities, the different languages, the different culture that brought that together. And that could only be kept together as part of the broader Soviet Union, in which people didn't feel that their own language was going to be oppressed, their own culture was going to be. And now, you know that the language is being oppressed, or the culture is being oppressed, or the traditions are being suppressed. It's that they're being bombed and shelled to death on the part of the other side. So this is why we cannot, we must raise strong opposition to any support on the part of our own imperialist government in this country for such a regime. There are now British troops in Ukraine already. At this moment, they are not in fighting capacity, but they are training the troops that then they are carrying out the war against the people in the Donbass. That's pretty clear, and this should be our straightforward position. We defend democratic rights in Ukraine as a whole. We oppose this regime, which is not only implementing harsh, neoliberal, brutal austerity policies against working people, is suppressing democratic rights, and is waging a unilateral war based on fascist gangs against its own people. This is a regime we can't support from any point of view, but this should be ABC.
Thank you.